Okay, and we are live. So today I have the pleasure to have Gifty with me. Gifty, she's my guest. I think we had our first discussion in December last year, and I was like, oh my God, we definitely need to go in live to discuss all what we just discussed together. So I'm really glad to have you, Gifty. I think the best is for you to introduce yourself and to tell us who are you, where do you live, what do you do for living?
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, thank you for reaching out as well. So, of course, I'm Gifty Enright. I live in the UK. I grew up in Africa, Ghana specifically, and I've been living in the UK for coming up to some maybe 35 years now. And I, what I do now has got nothing to do with what I trained to do.
Yes.
105 years ago, maybe, I trained as an accountant, and then went into IT, managing transformation programs. And so I did that consulting for quite a while. And then I wrote a book. My book came out, 7 years ago now, about, working mothers and the well-being aspect in terms of juggling life and that whole career thing, combining motherhood with career, etc. And as a result of the book, I got asked to do a TEDx talk, and then I started talking about, leadership and women in the workplace and coaching senior women. So that is what I do now.
So you coach mostly women. You
Yes.
coach organizations sometimes as well.
Yes. So it's basically working mothers who are perhaps struggling with the whole combining career and the children, and also women stepping into leadership and that whole other dynamic to it. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, great. So I can maybe introduce me shortly as well for the audience, if the audience doesn't know me. So my name is Christelle PILLOT, and I am a coach as well. And I kind of do the same thing that you do, but for me, it's all about redesigning a new meaningful career. So it's really like looking at what it is, what I want, and how can I get there. And there is so many themes that we have in common. I coach mostly women, international women too, and I found that the why I coach women is because indeed you say that, and you say that in your talk so well, that it's different. Being a woman is different than being a man. Even if we don't want to put human being in boxes, still there is differences being a woman. So what do you think? So what is the biggest difference of being a woman in a corporate world or in this working environment in comparison with being a man?
Yeah. So women are conditioned differently to men. And that's just society. It's just the way society conditions women. So we're brought up to be people pleasers. We're brought up to be the nice girl, as it were. And so when we go into the workplace, we are expected to play that stereotype. So normally we're seen as nurturing. And so when you step out of that role, and especially in management, where, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations, then you're sort of going against the stereotype, you're going against the grain, and it doesn't sit well with people. Both men and women, actually. It's not like it just doesn't sit well with men. It just doesn't sit well with people because that's not what is expected. A woman is expected to be the mother and nurture and whatever. And the man is supposed to be the go-getter and go out there and, I don't know, kill the animal and bring it home for food. So suddenly when the roles are swapped, or in the workplace, a woman is forced to step into a certain role. If she then doesn't do it in that nurturing, back foot, apologetic type of way, then, she's called all sorts of names and the wheels might come off because then she will then internalize it, think she's a bad person, and, leads to all sorts of issues as well. So what men can get away with, women can't even dream of getting away with that. And women need to be aware of that. As in the double bind, the fine line, what is it, the tightrope that they have to walk. And when you are aware of it, then you get the tools to be able to navigate it.
What I found fascinating is that so you were born in Ghana, Africa. It's I have been born in France. I have client and you have client everywhere as well. And it seems that it's kind of the same for every woman. So in US, in Europe, in Africa, that we have the same way of, as a woman, of like being at the service of the others around and not being in the center of our life.
Yep.
So can you feel that as well? Can you feel the differences between the culture maybe that you have seen, like in Europe, is that different than in the US, or can you feel that, or in Africa? And I know that Africa is big, Europe is big, right? So and we can go even in Asia and so on, definitely. Yeah. So what is your takeaway from the conditioning of a woman?
Right. So I think globally, women are expected to have their lives be in service of others, right? So it's like our lives are not ours. We only exist to facilitate our children's lives, our partners' lives, etc. And that is global, actually.
That's global.
Yeah. And then there are nuances, because then you go into certain cultures that are more chauvinistic, and then the woman has got to walk, 5 steps behind the husband or whatever. And so it is different. And in certain cultures, for example, like back home, when I'm there with my older brother and we go somewhere and he's speaking, I have to be prepared to be in the background. It's just the way it is, because he's a man. It's just the way it is. But there, perhaps it is more, that is the culture. Whereas here, you come here and in the workplace, I mean, how many times are women interrupted when they're speaking? So they will be interrupted like 3 times more than men.
Exactly.
So it shows up in a different way, So in certain places it's overt, in certain places it's covert, But the bottom line is that across all cultures, somehow women are either supposed to play a subservient role or a supporting role. And once you become aware of that, then depending, if you come into the workplace, what position you have, then you need to educate yourself and, arm yourself with the tools so that perhaps in a meeting, when you know that you're going to be interrupted 3 times more by both the men and the women, you can bring the conversation back, you can grab it back and not allow them to take it away from you.
Yeah, so it's more like being prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah. So knowing, I like that. So it's more like knowing what you want. So knowing what kind of role you want to play, not the role that society tells you to play, but more like, if I want to be a leader, if I want to be in a position where I want to share my point of view, I should accept this position. It's not only like a back support, but more like I show myself. And if I know that, so I can be prepared and I can play this role.
Yeah, exactly. And also knowing the rules, right? So if you don't know the rules, it's hard to play the game. You can only play the game if you know the rules.
It's easy. Yeah. That's interesting, because definitely it's like what we know when we are a child. Like I was at my parents' place and we played something new for me, so I asked for the rules. And when we go in the workplace, we kind of never ask for the rules. And what I have seen is that women, like men, they are more connected. They have they know that eventually they need to do a little bit more on networking. They eventually get more mentoring, or they go and have more mentoring. And women, and still in my coaching today, like I have one woman, she told me, I have no connection really at work. I have a lot privately, I'm great at that, but at work not really. So I believe that unconsciously men, they prepare themselves to know the rule, but women, so we just like go with the flow, and then we try to figure out. And in some country, we let us know that, yeah, it's the same rule for everyone. But at some point, and I have the feeling in my life, it was that as I became a mom, so at that moment I felt the difference. Before that, not really, because I'm a little bit like a man, like I grew up with men and so on. So
Yeah.
I'm really used to go in the conflict, no problem with that. But at that moment where I had the label mom on my body, on my head, so it was completely different. And
Absolutely.
we don't learn the rules of that, or we believe there is no special rules.
Well, so, and not just though we storm into the workplace not knowing the rules, it's not built for us either, right? The system is not built for us. And so you have the whole societal expectation on one side against a system that's not built for us, then that just makes it very hard to navigate. And that's why you need to take the time to educate yourself, to know that because you're a woman, perhaps you have to say things in a certain way for it to land. Whereas a man, because the system is built around them, they don't have to stop and think. So it's not necessarily that they know the rules. They don't have to know the rules because it's built for them, right? Whereas for us women, we need to know the rules because it's not built for us. So there is a level of education that goes on for you to understand. I mean, there's a workshop I do around organizations on the biases that women face, right? The unconscious biases the women face. And there's such a thing as performance bias, for example, where people expect a man to know what he's talking about, but for a woman, not so much, right? And so when you walk into a room with a man, they just assume he's the manager and you're the secretary, or what. I mean, the number of times that happened to me in the corporate world. But that is that unconscious bias that plays out. And then women get credited less for their achievements as well. So again, that's one thing that goes on. And then there's the old maternity bias as well. So there's all sorts of biases. Unconscious. It's not because people are walking around the workplace being bad people. No, they're just there because of societal conditioning, etc. And so when you are aware of those biases, for example, and you see it play out, then you can actually challenge it, but if you don't educate yourself on them, and next thing you find yourself being interrupted 3 times and you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, you just have that internal frustration, and next thing it affects your performance because you're internalizing it thinking, oh, whatever, I'm not good at it. It's not because you're not good at it.
That's the conclusion that we do. It's like, oh my God, so I don't get to speak. I got interrupted all the time. Usually, so in my case, it was usually that I had only men around. So I was like almost the one lady around the table. So, and I thought, okay, every time I try to speak, so I get interrupted more than the others around the table. So that means that I don't have enough authority. I am not good enough, and so on. And it's the first conclusion that we do. Because we don't know, and there is study about that, that we men usually are 3 times more interrupted than men. But we don't know. When we know that, it's okay, that has nothing to do with me.
Exactly.
And I am good enough, and I'm going to show my point. It's going to be fine. But when you don't have this kind of statistic or this kind of knowledge, you always push that back on yourself. I'm just not the right person for the job.
Not the right person, or not good enough because they're interrupting me and they won't let me speak, or you think, oh, I don't use the right posh words or whatever.
Exactly.
No, it's got nothing to do with you. And so once you know that, then if you get interrupted 3 times, you don't take it personally. You're like, okay, I'll go 4 times. I will, and you also get the tools to, get people to stop interrupting you. May I get to the end of my sentence before the next interruption, please?
So there is
Yeah.
someone in the chat saying, so I was asked to make a coffee in a room full of men, and I
Yeah.
did. And then the CEO went around the meeting table for introductions. After I introduced myself, the people who asked me for coffee was very apologetic. But that's the thing. So at the beginning,
Yeah.
so she has been asked to make coffee for the room.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and then the thing is, if somebody's asking you to make the coffee, question is, do you make it or do you manage their expectations? I'm actually the director. I just popped out to make my own coffee. So I'm sorry, I don't have the time to make yours at the moment. Right?
I don't know how you like it. I think best is for you to do it by yourself.
Right? Or maybe you want to talk to one of the waiting staff because, I'm actually directing that meeting next door. So it's finding the way to drop your position in there, and all what you're doing, you're not being aggressive, you are just educating them, right? It's managing
like
the
that.
expectation, because people, all what they're doing is acting out an unconscious bias.
Exactly.
And so long as you're not being defensive and it's just a bias they don't even know, and you take that as an education opportunity, to educate them of your role there, and, offer them help. So, I'm sorry, I am directing this meeting next door. Can I get you one of the wait staff?
Oh, by the way, if you go and get your coffee, could you have one for me, please?
Right. Right. So, yeah.
Yes, definitely. So I like the fact indeed, like it's more educating and not being defensive. Like Kim said that as well. She liked it. And it's exactly what Carol Ann said. It's like at the end, they were sorry about the mistake that they have done. So it's really not bad men or bad manners. It's just the way they have been conditioned, the way we have been conditioned to. So there is no enemy in the room. It's just more like adjusting again.
Yeah, and it's also very good. So to stop you from being defensive, because once you get into a defensive place, your brain throws out all sorts of weird stuff, and you don't want it to, because then you can't articulate yourself properly because you're angry, and you end up not saying anything and you bottle it up, right? I once turned up to manage a program, and I was a program manager. Did you know that on my first day I turned up, and for my sins, I look. I looked young. So this guy who was like, I don't know, his manager was going to be, I was going to be his manager's manager. So 2 levels below, as it were. And he walked up to me and he asked me, are you the work experience kid? Right? And I just smiled and I thought, listen, I still look young, I'm rocking it. But that's one right. That's one way to look at it. And later on, when he realized I was his manager's manager, he was morbid. He was absolutely morbid.
Yes.
But again, it was, for me, I just chuckled because it was so funny, and I was quite flattered. But at the end of the day, people walk around with all these assumptions, and you can't control that. You don't know what is in somebody's head. You can't control that. What you can control is your own internal narrative, right? So what is going on here? And if you know it's a bias, particularly if it's not unconscious, then you can't be beating people over the head with it. That is not productive, but it's more about, let me educate you on this fact here.
Yes.
I am going to be your manager's manager, and where is the boardroom, please?
I am curious because you are a specialist in well-being at work, and you know so much about burnout. Do you have statistics, or do you know if women are more subject to burnout than men, or if it's like the same level?
No, it's not the same. It's not the same. I don't have the exact figures at the top of my head at that moment, but McKinsey did published one of the research. I think this was going back a few years now, maybe 4 years ago. about women in the workplace, because they issue that women in workplace report every year. And I'm trying to remember figures off my head, which escapes me now, but basically women were burning out faster than men in the workplace.
Okay.
And the difference in the percentage was at least something like 10 or 15%, in terms of those who were burning out, with the women being higher. And from my point of view, the reason why that's happening is the women have to deal with these unconscious biases in the workplace that men don't, for a start. So they, the moment they open the door, there's all that to be dealt with. But also, particularly mothers, before they step in the workplace, they've lived a whole day before they step in the workplace in the morning, right? Because they've done all that. So if we're talking about physical energy, they have expended a lot of energy, physical and emotional, before they get into the workplace. And then
Yes.
you get in there and then you get interrupted 3 times before you can get the words out. And then you get asked to make the coffee, right? Or take the minutes. And then by the end of the day, it's a lot. It's a lot. And that's why women burn out quicker than men.
It's not because they are weaker or so, but it's really because they deal with more at home. It's still like that. So they deal with more at home, and then they deal with more resistance at work.
Yes.
Okay.
And a stat I can tell you now is 75% of the caring burden in society falls on women. It doesn't fall on men. So before they get to the workplace, they would have done that 75% caring before they get there. So that just burns them out.
Yeah, and to be honest, so I know men doing that now, like really taking care of the children before going to work and so on. So there is always more and more men doing that. And they say it's really, really interesting to hear, because they have exactly the same expression that women. So they feel tired at 8 o'clock, and they get trouble to get the kiddies to go out of bed and to go to school and so on. So I met a man like 2 weeks ago, and he has 3 children. I think it was like 8 o'clock Monday, first day after vacation. I was like, oh my God, so I need vacation again. And he had exactly the same trouble, the same discussion that women has together. And that's the moment. And my husband does a lot at home as well. So we have 3 children. So it's well balanced. And then I can see that he has the same when he's in charge of the kitchen also. He has exactly the same way of reacting than a woman could have. And sometimes even more. It's like, hey, take it easy. And then I say exactly the same expression that I hear from men, like, hey, take it easy, it's all good, or like really like joking about that. It's funny. So we are not so different. And with men take the same responsibility at home and at work, they are kaput as well. So they have trouble as well to keep on with the rhythm. And at some point they say, okay, I just need a break now. The difference that when they do that, usually they have a wife doing it as well, so they can indeed. So they can give up and take it again and so on. At home, when the woman does everything or almost everything, it's really difficult to give that to someone else. So that's
and the men are very good. And 2 things where you were saying that made me chuckle, actually. So women who think that they have good partners that are engaged, I always challenge them. Because again, there's a societal conditioning there where all the man has to do is a bit, and we think they're so good, right? Because the bar is so low. But honestly, when I'm coaching women, I've got a spreadsheet that I bring out, and then we tabulate it in terms of tasks. And by the time we finish, even those that think the men are good, suddenly they realize, oh, hang on, I am still doing the heavy lifting. Right. So there is that in terms of perception. I'm not saying the men aren't helping. Women are beginning to get the men engaged. And I think is the only way we're going to break that pay gap and all the other gaps we face is to get the men engaged. So we absolutely should. But get scientific about it, because even when you think they're good, they're nowhere near half as good as you think they are. The second thing is, they're good at boundaries. They're good at saying, no, I've had enough. Because society allows them to do that. Whereas with us, no, we have to keep going until we're dead, right? And so even when it comes to burnout, it's just like, when they're watching football, that's it. Nothing is going to shift to them. Whereas whatever it is we think we're interested in, we can do it with one hand and continue doing all the other things as well. Right. So it's knowing that it's not a level playing field. And to the point you make, when you go, after you've done your 75% care burden, when you go into workplace that many are competing with, right? They've got wives at home and whatever, or even if the wives are not at home, still doing that, their 75%.
Exactly.
So again, it is not a level playing field there as well, and that is why we just burn out so easily, because there's only 24 hours in a day. There's only so much energy you have.
Yeah. So what do you suggest for women and men? Being close to burnout or being already in burnout? What are your steps, your suggestion? And I see in the chat, so I see a lot of comments. So thank you for your comments. If you have questions, please put your question in the chat, and then I can see them, and then I can ask the question for you. So Gifty, so your tools in order to prevent burnout or to go out of burnout.
Right. So I'll talk about 3 things for burnout. And I can talk about boundaries forever, right? And boundaries is so important. And unfortunately, you need self-esteem to be able to enforce your boundaries, right? And also you need good communication skills to be able to enforce your boundaries. But without boundaries, you will always burn out. And that really is the bottom line. Without boundaries, you burn out. Because, if you don't know when to stop, if you don't know where your red lines are, and you're just allowing people to just walk all over it, you're going to get resentful and you're going to run out of energy. And you're going to make yourself sick. This is how people end up in burnout, because rather than saying no, they say yes. And there is such a thing when I'm coaching people as a compassionate no. And the compassion is towards yourself and to the other person as well. So to the other person, so you're not saying no in an aggressive way, but compassion towards yourself, because you can't keep pouring from an empty cup.
Yeah.
But people think that when they have boundaries, it means they're a bad person. In the workplace, they interpret boundaries as not being flexible. Right? And I was one of those women where I was damned if anybody was going to think that I had gone soft because I had children. So I was going to go toe to toe with the men. And even though I had children, I remember somebody once saying to me, I actually wrote a blog about it, that I behaved like my children were a secret. And I did. You wouldn't even know, I was that fiercely competitive, and it just wasn't helping me at all, or helping my children, as it turned out. But for you in the workplace, it is not about being inflexible. It is about knowing your value and your worth. And you will know your value and your worth if you're delivering, right? And so if you're not being lazy and you're there being a professional and you're delivering, then it shouldn't be hard for you to say no. Because when you say you're going to deliver, you deliver. And so people get to trust you.
Yes.
And outside the workplace, I was able to negotiate all sorts of crazy start hours and finish hours and all that. And a lot of the time, I was actually a contractor. I wasn't even fully employed. I was a contractor. And anybody that's done contracting know, as a contractor, you have no rights. You're not even a proper human, right? The employed people are the proper human. And then after that, there's you. As a contractor, you have no feelings and stuff. But I was able to determine my start hours. And sometimes start at 10 rather than, this was when everybody had to go to the office, etc. But it does depend on your work, because I knew that people wanted me to deliver their programs. I knew they knew that if I was at the helm delivering their programs, it was going to happen. It was going to be well managed, right? And so if you've had people fight for you to come and deliver their programs, it's a nod to you and how good you are. and that only comes from doing a good job. So that bit about that self-worth, that self-belief doesn't come from the ether, do you know? And so yes, you have to prove yourself, but there's a baseline, as in you need to remember you're a human being, and just by human you're worthy, full stop. There is that, right? But you can't go to the corporate world and say, I'm human, so I'm not going to deliver. That should be enough. It doesn't work like that. And so you have to deliver. And once you deliver and everybody knows the hang on, this person is good, you know, it is easier then to push back, because they know your no means no. And if you say yes, you're going to deliver. So boundaries.
So that means that you have to be kind of very transparent. So
Yeah.
to transparent is aligned with your values. With okay, my values are good work, this kind of standard. So I
Yeah.
know that's my values. I work for this kind of standard. But when I'm here, I'm clear as well that that is no, that is yes. Very
Yeah.
clear, very straightforward.
Yes, and everybody knows where they stand with you, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think it was last week or the week before, I wrote a post on LinkedIn to say, you know, strong women, we don't have attitudes, we have standards, right? And
Yeah.
so it's having the standards. My standard is, you know, I'm badass at delivery. If you want me to deliver, consider it done. But for me to be able to do it at that high level,
Yeah.
here are my terms, right? And so when people think about boundaries, boundaries allow you to deliver better. They allow you to be
I agree with that.
right. So they allow you to be a better version of yourself for whoever
Yeah.
needs you.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you don't have those boundaries and you're working all the hours God sent, and rather than say no, you say yes, you're tired. So you're going to compromise on your delivery. You're not going to do a
Yes.
good job because you're
Yeah.
tired. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it makes it harder for you to say no because you are overcompensating,
Yes.
you know? So it
Yeah.
makes it even harder. So for me, when it comes to burnout, I will say, you know, boundaries equals, or no boundaries equal burnout, full stop. So that's the first thing. And I really could talk about boundaries forever. The other thing is your energy levels.
I
Check
agree
in
with
with your energy
that.
levels. Where are you? Do you know? Because if you haven't slept all night, children have been crying, whatever it is, and you then get up and you go and you think you're going to tackle your most difficult project, you're being stupid. It's just, you know, if you do it, you're going to do a bad job. Do you know? And I know sometimes you don't have a choice, and you know, I think last week I was doing a podcast last week, and my dog was being put down as we were doing that, which is really hard emotionally for me. And I had to tell them on the podcast that this is what happening, because I knew that, you know, I wasn't going to be 100%, you know, and it's not the same as, so that was me, you know, giving myself some grace, because normally I know I deliver, I'm badass, whatever, right? But not all the time. I'm human. It depends on what is going on. And it takes confidence to be able to say, I can't deliver this because of X, Y, Z. And so this is where the energy comes in. Check in with your energy. And if the energy is not right, have the self-esteem to manage expectations, right? And it's not right as well. Again, have the self-esteem to take care of yourself, so that when you're better, you can come back and deliver. So some
Yeah.
people are sick and they will work through it and all that because they're afraid, and it's just criminal. Anyway, and then the other thing where basically you need to really, when it comes to well-being, is know that nobody, even your children, your loved ones, anybody that loves you, they can't do it for you, right? It is up to you to protect yourself. And so when you've come up with these boundaries and stuff, how are you going to protect yourself? How are you going to communicate this so people know that, hang on, there's this boundary here, and she doesn't like it when I phone at 10 at night because that's her bedtime, so she's not going to answer. Well, my phone wouldn't even ring.
That's the thing.
You know, my phone won't even ring. My D&D comes on and it won't even ring. And so I have my boundaries, and I find the tools to enforce the boundaries. And one of the tools is communicating. right? Finding the communication tools to enforce a boundary. You can use tech tools to enforce a boundary, right? So it's three things: the boundaries, energy, and the tools. Those are what you need for well-being.
I fully agree with that. So, and I could see that with myself is that exactly what you said. So you cannot give for empty cup. And for me, it's like when you have no energy, so you cannot give. So at that moment, you really need as well. It's okay. That's not now. I cannot now. So it's really saying yes to yourself as well, and no for the moment. But as soon as you have energy again, so you can give again, and
Yes.
this balance. So let me, and I really felt that in my life that I was able to give more because I was just able to give that at the right time for me. And then I always say it's not a time management problem, it's more an energy management problem, because you can
Absolutely.
have the best time management ever, like really well organized, but if your energy is not right, you will not be able to put all what you have done on the time management. It's just not able. You are well organized, but the energy is not enough.
Yeah.
On the other side, so if you have like a lot of energy, like you are really passionate, you want to do things happen, you have the impression that it's going to be doable, so you will be able to do that even if the time management is not really like very very organized or very good. So for me, I believe, again, I have three children, so I have my business. I need time management, but
Yeah.
energy management is far, far,
Yeah.
far, far more important.
I
And
agree.
communication.
Yeah.
And then bring me to a point, because I always say that the family is like a company that you need to it's a team, like it's really a team. So, and as a mom, you don't have to be like the micromanager and doing everything for everyone. And I always say that, so in my case anyway, it's what I did is I did so that my family can work without me, so they can
Yes.
really handle things without me. So
Yes.
if I am not in the equation anymore, they are doing things very very well.
Yeah.
And it's more like being like yeah, a CEO but far away, like in vacation, and just looking at what things going on. And you speak as well a lot about leadership. So what is for you what is the meaning of leadership, and how can you link that to burnout or to family? And yeah, what can we learn from how to be a good leader at home and at work?
Yeah. So when it comes to leadership, I think people get into leadership a lot of the time, not because they're good leaders. They get in
Yes,
there because they're good technically at their job.
I agree.
And that is a problem, right?
Yes,
That's really problematic, because the fact that somebody is a good technician does not mean they're going to be a good leader. Leadership is a
yes,
completely different skill set.
yes.
And so we need to understand some people should never be managers, really. They
And
should
they
never
don't
be.
want to. They don't even want
Yeah,
to
yeah,
sometimes.
exactly. And they don't want to either. And so it's more understanding about those who want to be. And also, if somebody wants to be a manager, understanding the motive. Why do they want to be a manager? Because if they want to be a manager just to boss people around, that's not the right reason why to be a manager either, right? And so a leader, what your job is to be able, if you like, you are an enhancer. That's what you do. So your people, you are there to make them become the better
Yeah,
version,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
you facilitate that as a leader. That is your job, to bring out the best of your team,
That's
and
it.
also to lead them. And so for me, I would say leading with vulnerability first. They need to see you make mistakes. You need to own up to your mistake. You can't come pretending you're perfect and you know everything. That's not a good leader. That's an egotist, right? And so for a leader, you're leading from the front, but they need to know you're human. They need to know you're vulnerable. And I also say lead with curiosity. So when somebody's made a mistake, right, that's not the time to go in there with the big stick and criticism. Because why do I say that? It doesn't solve anything, right? Because what you want to is to understand why, what happened, so then you can give them the tools they need to stop it from happening again in the future. But if you're
Yeah.
going in there with criticism, what you're doing is making them paranoid. So next, it doesn't mean they won't make the mistake again because you haven't got to the root cause. They'll make the mistake. It's just next time they'll hide it from you, right? Which
Or
makes it
they make it even bigger because they're afraid of the consequences. Yeah.
right. So they don't tell you until it is too late,
Yeah.
by which time you've lost millions, right? So
Exactly.
again, and that is not, the criticism does not solve anything apart from make people feel small and hide things from you. It's more about curiosity. Why is this happening? How can I support you? Blah, blah, blah. Lessons learned, right? And then also making feedback the normal way of operating. So rather than a tool for people to feel petrified and everything, so people feel free to give you feedback
Yeah.
and you yourself give feedback. So when you're giving somebody feedback, they don't think, oh my God, my world is ended. They think I'm rubbish and, I'm going to hang my head in shame. No, it is more about exchange of information so that we can achieve better outcomes. That is
Yeah.
feedback. And it should work both ways,
I
right?
like what Christina just said. She said like, okay, great point. Not everyone wants to lead or manage, and those good at their job that feels like they have to progress to become a leader. But yes, it's true. So many of them, they get the job of leader, but they don't really want it. It's
No.
just like the next step. And then she said they hide it like our children, and it's exactly that. So when we come to with an authoritarian way of leadership, so what happens is that the people react like children, and we don't
Yes.
really need that in a company, right?
In the
We don't.
workplace.
Yeah,
No.
we don't need that in the
No.
workplace. So
And
it's
people
exactly what happened. Yeah.
and people and in IT, they understand the meaning of mistakes and failure and failing fast so you can fix it and move on, right? And so if somebody is going to make a mistake, you want them to make it quickly and at a small scale so you can fix it and move on. And so it's being open to mistakes. So people are not afraid. It's a culture of they're not afraid to make mistakes because the mistakes don't define them. A mistake just means that there's something wrong with the system, something is not right, and then let's get the information, fix it, and move on. Do you know? And the last thing for a leader, I would say you have to listen. It is not all about you. You have to listen. I've been in meetings where the most knowledgeable people didn't say a word because the loud ones were busy beating their chest and we missed the whole point. I mean, I'd been in IT meetings where we were going to take a system down, which we didn't need to take down because the person that actually knew wasn't speaking. Do you know?
Yes, I have been in
And
some
whereas it
meetings
was
like that.
allowed, the empty vessels are the ones making the most noise. And normally in these meetings is the one that's paid the most that tends to speak the most, right? Which again is an error, right? The one that's paid the most should only facilitate and open the door for the clever
Yeah.
ones to speak. And so once you understand these things about leadership, you lead in a different way. So I would
I
say
like.
be vulnerable, be curious, encourage feedback, and listen.
I love that. I have 2 points that I would like to share. One point is I have been invited to a conference last week, and it was about the future skills, and it was all about, in this world that is really exponentially moving, changing, evolving, and then there is a lot of chaos because we as human beings, so it's too fast. So we are moving too fast, and then we have to adapt very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And the skills that we need in the future, it's all about being able to create a vision in order to be able to take other human being with us and to get in one direction together. And it's all about like really leadership, but in
Yeah.
this way of having a vision and going together in one direction. And
Yeah.
then it's like it was about emotional intelligence, but it was as well more about this we intelligence, like the
Mm-hmm.
way to connect communicate as human being, and the fact that in the future, if we want to thrive and to be able to compete somehow with AI, so it's to be better human being. So to have like this empathy, to have this communication, to have the vision, to have the creation, to have the flexibility, to have the how to say that, to have the perseverance, and to be flexible. So it's really like all what you just shared. So that was one point that I wanted to share as well. But on top of that, what I'm thinking is that all what you shared is like exactly what women tend to be in a company or at work. And it's exactly sometimes what is difficult, because if they show a little bit too much vulnerability, so they are not being taken seriously, or they are like, you are weak, or you don't know how to lead. So I found that it's a little bit tricky, because it's a kind of human way of being, which seems to be the more performant. It seems to be more that what we will need in the future. But at the same time, so women, they need to be stronger, to be more seen, and to continue to be the same way that they are.
Yeah. So, and again, to the point I made at the start, the workplace is not built for women. Because if it was, these skills of vulnerability and being curious, right? It would be modeled. Those were the skills that people would see and say, that's a good leader. But it's not modeled. It's not built for women. And so they're being aggressive and shouting and the rah, rah, the male masculine energy type thing, that is what is seen as leadership. Right?
Until now.
And so in terms of where we are, things are changing, but not anywhere near fast enough, right? And so people would rather have a man in certain positions. They would rather have an inefficient man than an overperforming efficient woman. And that is a fact. So things that women are naturally good at, as you were saying, the empathy, etc. Interestingly, with AI being able to do all the mechanical things, these softer skills are now going to be required.
Yes.
And guess who has an abundance of those softer skills? Women. And so the workplace doesn't have a choice but to change, because what used to drive it is changing. Yeah. And the skills that we need, if you like, for the next generation, the next iteration. If you take Gen Z, for example, they don't respond very well to that sort of male aggressive way of managing. They don't, So the next generation, in terms of their drive, is also different. Now, when they're looking for a job, it's not just how much is it paying. They want to know, do they treat their people well? And now there are companies that produce all these stats, and then you can go and see. One of my friends, her daughter was applying to law firms, and previously my time, it was more about what they're paying, are they giving company cars and expense accounts and stuff like that. Their kids are not looking for that anymore. They're looking at these tables of how do they treat their employees and what is the work-life balance like. And there are tables now that you can go look. And those are the ones that they will apply to. So if you want the top talent, those people, this is what they're looking at. So you better start shifting, and gone are the days where you will have a bad male manager, for example, and he'll still be kept because they would say, oh, but he's a good salesperson or he delivers, right? But it's that way of thinking is not sustainable anymore. You either treat people with respect, treat them as humans, or we don't care what you deliver, because in the long run, when you're costing us those high retention rates, you may be the best salesperson, but then now if they compare it to the retention rates, they realize that the effect on the bottom line is not good.
Yes.
But previously, that they would just look, he's a good salesperson, they'll keep that, right? But now they're beginning to understand that there are other costs that happen maybe a year or two down the line, which also impacts the bottom line. So things are changing. We live in a different environment. Yes, they're not changing fast enough. But when people are bemoaning AI and thinking, oh, we're going to lose our jobs, in a way, it is also going to be a leveler of sorts,
Yes.
In terms of equaling the playing field, because the things that, that you now have to, the difference now is you have to be human.
Yes, that's the thing. Yeah.
Right? You have to be human.
Yeah.
So that is where we're going.
And that's the thing. I think now it's going to be far more about the human experience. So
Yes.
you are going to grow or to thrive if you are a better human. And a better human is not like a stereotype, but it's really like being more aligned with your values, being sure about what you want, being able to communicate exactly what you said, and having this capability to work together, to communicate together, to understand the others, to give the right tools, and so on. So that's why I found that really interesting last week. It was my sensation. It's exactly the way I raise my children. I want them to be more creative, to be good at communicating, and so on, because I believe it's the skills for tomorrow. But it was just a great way to have that in a conference, and to let that some teacher, because I work a lot with one school here in Frankfurt, and they start to feel it, even if it's like a very professional school and like in mechanic and so on. They start to say, your soft skill things there, I think now it's more important than what I teach. I was like, okay, that is interesting. The first time that I hear that from all teacher being very practical and so on. So they start to feel it. And I agree with you that the things are moving slowly, but with AI coming like very exponentially, maybe the world is going to change a little bit quicker now than it was in the past. I don't know in the chat, so for the people that look at us, if you have questions to Gifty, please ask your question. We still have a few minutes together. I would like to ask you a question regarding the fact that you raised in Ghana, and you studied in Ghana as well, and then you came to England. So, what is your and we discussed that in the event. So, what is the wisdom that you bring from Africa, from Ghana to UK? How your origin helped you to feel stronger, or to feel maybe less strong because you feel, okay, there it's different and it's difficult for me to cope with.
So, and now you hear people bandy around the word community, right? And so from my upbringing, it is all about community. And I think it was yesterday, my post was, about it takes a village. And I grew up with that. I grew up with that, where, your aunt, your cousins, big families, everybody is related to everybody. And even those you're not related to, you're still called aunt and uncle. And you were never on your own. You never felt alone, and you go to Africa, yes, there's extreme poverty, still. But there is a level of connectedness, that you're not alone. But whereas when I come over here, it is like people don't even know their neighbors, but we're social humans. That is just how we're wired. And so when you are with another human, different hormones and stuff get released, and when you're on your own, different things happen as well. And I mean, there's research to show that loneliness can kill you faster than smoking cigarettes. So for me, in terms of having grown up in Africa, it was that sense of community, and it's something I gravitate towards because I know the importance of that. And so being a good person, being a person of integrity, for me is important because that's what allows you to build community. That is what people know where they stand with you. This is what makes people gravitate towards you. And you achieve a lot more with community. What is it? There is a proverb. I don't know whether it's African. If you want to go quicker, go
Go
alone.
along.
Yeah, but if you want to go further,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Go
do you
with.
know? And so, yes, if you just want to just get there quicker, by all means go alone. But what's the point in getting there quicker and having nobody to share it with? I'd rather take my time and get there when I get there.
Yeah, and maybe, and I believe that alone and quicker. Okay, you are alone, you are quicker. It's great, so you are at your goal quicker. But I don't believe that the sustainability is there. I think it's very fragile.
Yeah.
But when you have like the community, maybe it takes a little bit more time, but then it's very strong.
Yes.
It's very sustainable.
Yes, and it is so now, people are now beginning to understand the mental health impacts of having a community. There's research I create in my book about the things that impact your well-being, and number one is your mental health, right? That impacts your well-being, and your mental health is impacted by community. And so if you're lonely, your mental health is not good. So is understanding if mental health is one of the top factors is driving your well-being, then it's what sustains your mental health. What are the sort of things, and community is huge. So once you understand that, you start structuring your life that way. I live in a neighborhood where everybody knows everybody, and it's intentional. We cultivated that. There's not that many of us, and it is intentional. People help everybody because that's how I grew up in Ghana. People help people, and people, everybody knows everybody. Yes, sometimes people know other people's business they shouldn't. That's the downside of it. But it is just you're never alone. And I don't think I talk out of line when I talk about the incidence of people being on antidepressant being high in what the so-called developed countries when they're richer, and why are these poor countries, why is it, that they're not reaching for the antidepressants when they have real problems? Sometimes they don't know whether they're going to have enough food to eat for the day,
Yes.
But it's because it's buffered. It is buffered in terms of how you feel by the society around you, where you're held and you're never alone and all the rest of it. So, yeah, for me, that's a gift Africa gave me, community.
I understand that because I have a lot of friends from Togo, like directly close to Ghana, and they told me the same. As they came to France and so on, they say that's so sad how people interact together. And she really told me her point of view. It was a long time ago, and I never saw that this way. And I understood at that moment because I know Togo as well. I do I travel regularly over there, but it's not my culture. And at that moment, I understood what she meant. I said, okay, I understand that. And to be honest, in my case, so I work for a French company, but I was in Germany. I was alone. I had no community at all. So I spent years alone. And I understood the power of the community really long, like, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, or even like 3 years ago, like really, like maybe 5 years ago or 7 years ago, where I said, okay, that's important. And I need it to, even if I were wired to be alone and to cope with it, still, I believe indeed it's so important.
Yeah.
To be with the right people around you, or even to confront yourself with some people. Sometimes you don't understand the point of view, but it's really interesting, to develop that, to be a better human being. And it's good for you, it's good for them, it's good for working together, for the leadership, for the family, for the future. Very interesting. So we have Kim she said that Brian chat, thanks for so much, Christelle and Gifty, loved it. for anyone who would like to see more of Gifty, I have the pleasure of she does a LinkedIn with you, a live tomorrow with you, right? So you have another.
Yeah. That's Kim. Hi, Kim. Can't wait.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So that's community as well. That's why I really wanted to do that on LinkedIn. I wanted people to be able to just not like a conversation, both of you, but really having people being with us and interacting with us, reacting with us. I think there is like the power of different minds being together. And that's the beginning of a community. So please connect with Gifty if you are not yet. So she is on LinkedIn, she is on Instagram, and maybe somewhere else. So I don't know exactly where. I know you are on LinkedIn. I know you are on Instagram. Where are you to be
So
seen?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but I'm not that active there. I am more active on LinkedIn.
Okay. More active on LinkedIn. And indeed, you are very active on LinkedIn. You post like every day or
I post
almost
Monday to Friday.
Okay. And if you want, you can connect with me too. So I am mostly on LinkedIn as well, to be honest. LinkedIn is really my platform where I like the post, I like the people, I like the interactions. So thank you, Gifty, for being with me today. And if you still have for the people looking at the replay, if you have any kind of question or comment, write down in the chat, and then we will see, and then we will answer that. Okay. So now I'm going to try to end the stream. It seems to be easy. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.